So, I want to start off this video by saying thank you for the love and support that I got from my first video. You know, it's over 540 views and counting in 1 week, and that is just absolutely incredible. And yeah, because I did not expect that many people to actually watch it, but now, yeah, and it was a humbling feeling. And for those people that may have been a little confused with the premise of that video, I'll just explain it now. That video was about people who may have been discouraged within the car community. Not so much myself, I just used my car as an example for that because I've had a little bit of discrimination about my car, but I don't really care what people say about my car, to be honest, because I've put, you know, like I mentioned in the previous video, I put all my time and effort into the car, so I don't care. You know, people can say what they want. But anyways, yeah, I just want to say thank you, and yeah, so now we will move on to the rest of the video. So, this video is going to be about buying a used car, and specifically from a private seller. Now, you can do this with some dealers too, obviously, but it's easier to do with a private seller just because, you know, dealers might look at you kind of funny if you're on the ground looking underneath for rust or anything like that. But, and I'm going to use my car as an example because it's in front of me. And yeah, so anyways, the first thing you're going to want to do before you even contact or look at the car is research common issues. Like with my Mustang, it's rust, and specifically in the shock towers and the floors. And it can get very, very bad, and you want to watch out for that, you know, in these. But obviously, you know, all cars are different that way. All cars do experience some rust issues typically. And yeah, so you do want to look out for that. As well, like, something else you're going to want to do as well, and it's easier to do on older cars, but you can still do this on newer cars as well, that when you get there, the first thing you should do is pop the hood and just put your hand not on the engine block, because you can burn yourself if it was running previously, but see if you can feel any warmth. And if there is a chance that the seller is hiding something, and it's just, you know, something that when it's first starting, it just runs rough or something like that, and, you know, then when it's warm, it doesn't do that issue anymore, right? So you want to watch out for that. And as well, something you will want to bring with you anytime you look at any vehicle is a flashlight. Doesn't matter if it's day or night, a flashlight will help you quite a bit. Unless you're able to look at it on the left, and even then, you still want a flashlight if it's on the left, right? And you can get, you know, from anywhere really, just a cheap little flashlight. Doesn't have to be super bright, but just has to be small enough to be portable, or even you can get one of those torch lights that mechanics use, right? You know, they work just as well, obviously. Let's see, what else is there for that stuff. And then also, if you test drive the car and everything's all good to go and you think it's okay, the one thing that you're going to want to watch out for in the end is sorry, just lost my train of thought. Yeah, sorry about that. Had somebody walking by, didn't want to restart the video again. So oh yeah, when you're buying a car, or even this could be for sellers as well, in case, you know, that you just don't want anything coming back on you because, you know, the car can break in a week or whatever else like that, and it wasn't disclosed because you didn't know about it, or when you're buying a car, they know about that, but, you know, that it's not mentioned. Anyways, so when you're filling out the paperwork, and like in Canada, we don't have titles, we just use a bill of sale, and that's how we buy and sell cars. How we register them and share them and all that stuff is through a bill of sale. Anyways, at the bottom of your bill of sale, or your title, depending on where you are, there is an area where it'll say, you know, what, is there anything you want to disclose about this car? And most people leave that blank or put as is. Now, here's the thing. If they don't put as is, and now this is for where I am, and I'm sure the States is just like this too. and other countries, I'm sure, that use the same similar system to buy and sell cars. If they don't put as is, anything that comes up within, I think it's within the first month or so, the seller is held liable for that. So you do want to be careful about that whole thing. And, you know, you don't want to go through that court battle if you're buying a car. If you don't see as is, then, you know, it's kind of a good thing for you to a certain extent if you're buying the car. But if you're selling the car, it can really bite you in the ass later on. Case in point. Now, I don't know if she's going to go through with this. Again, I'm not going to mention names or anything like that. I heard about from a friend that her friend bought a Mustang. You know, and that's a 95. It's a cool car. Second generation, you know. I think that's the best looking modern Mustang to me, but, you know, I'm in the minority with that. Anyways, I love that gen, and it has a 3.5 with a 5-speed. But what's interesting is that the tranny was swapped in this one for, at some point. And the previous owner had done this, but he didn't do it properly. You know, there was stuff missing, stuff not aligned. You know, it was not good. And so they were trying to figure out why the clutch was so stiff. Because it shouldn't be super, super stiff in that Mustang, right? But turns out that, yeah, it was because of that, right? So, you know, and the seller did not put as is down there, so there could be some stuff happening with that. But you also don't want to have that happen to you. And of course, when you're looking at a car, you know, you always want to check the brakes, the clutch if it has one. You'll want to check the fluids, obviously, you know, all of them, including, you know, see if the rad fluid is dirty. If it's dirty, it might just be that, you know, might just need a flush and everything's okay, but it might be that there's a little more involved than that. I know my car needs a flush right now, and I just haven't had I don't have a hose here, so I can't just do it myself. You know, I'd have to farm it out, and I just don't have the money for that. But that is a thing you want to look for. And also, something else too, is if a car is really clean. Because when you look at something that's really dirty and just, you know, you might think, okay, there's going to be some issues with it and whatever else. However, if you notice that something is clean, specifically if you look in the engine bay and everything is just like spotless, right? That could be that they've actually taken care of it, more so than not. But, and also, when you go for the test drive, and sorry, I'm bouncing around a bit because I'm thinking. When you go for the test drive in this car, provided that if you're allowed to, and now, some cars you don't need it, but, you know, if you're able to take a test drive, I do it. Just because it shows so much more. Like, I bought my car without a test drive because the rear brake was locked up. You know, so I couldn't actually take it for a drive. But also, it didn't run quite right and everything like that. It did run, but not very well. So I just bought it as kind of an as-is sort of situation that I knew that I'm going to get into a bit of work, and that was fine. You know, it's cost me a bit more than I wanted, but that's okay. You know, that's cars for you. You can double or triple what you initially think, and that's typically where you're gonna end up. You know, I originally thought that this was gonna take $500 and about 2 months to do. Well, it actually ended up being a year and $2,100. So, you know, and that's not including some of the favors I've gotten and some of the gifts I've gotten for parts. So, you know, there's over $3,000 into this car easy. I know that, but that's okay. You know, and something else that you'll want to do as well. If you are going to go look at a car, take somebody with you, and specifically somebody that might know a bit about cars. You know, they don't have to be absolute experts. You don't have to bring a mechanic with you, but just somebody who has a little bit of knowledge that can point out things as well that you might not be able to see at times. You know, they might just spot it when you're looking at something else, right? That's always good. And you're always going to want to, with just about any car, you know, even older Corvettes do have, even though they're fiberglass bodies, there is metal in them that does rust, and that's the bird cage right underneath. That's what they call it. So, yeah, you always want to look out for rust. And if you can, I understand sometimes it's a little difficult, especially with lowered cars or whatever else, but, you know, ask the seller if you can jack it up a bit and take a look underneath. You know, worst case scenario, they say no, and then it's just like, okay, well, are they hiding something, or do they just not trust somebody with a jack? You never know, right? Because there are lots of people that don't know what they're doing with a jack. Whoever owned this car before me did the same thing. You know, they jacked up on the floor, and the floor is about a half inch out in the one spot, which you can tell somebody had a bottle jack and just continued to go up. And rather than putting it on the axle or on the control arm, they did that. So, and there's lots of people that do that. So you want to watch out for that sort of stuff as well. Let's see, what else? Oh, also, ask the seller if they have any service records for the car. You know, like oil changes, or if it's had a flush in it, you know, do they have the receipts for that and the dates for those being done? And, you know, beyond that, also, you'll want to see if, like in Canada, I'm trying to think of the website. I will find it and leave a link in the description for any car that you might buy in Canada. Now, I'm sure there's probably one for the States as well, but this one's specifically for Canada. That if you buy a car, or if you're about to buy a car and you want to check the VIN status to make sure that it's not stolen or anything like that, you can check it on this website, and it'll show you the status of the car, whether it's active or whether there's any records of it or whatever else, right? So it's a nice thing to do, because I didn't do that on this, but it wouldn't have come up with anything anyways. This is an out-of-province car, which I didn't know at the time when I bought it, but nor did the seller, so, you know, he knew less than I did about the car. And, you know, and don't be afraid of getting something that's needs a little bit of work. Like, obviously do what's within what you believe you can do, or know that you can do. Because, yeah, there is a lot of things, like, you know, if it's got an engine knock, you know, you probably want to avoid that, unless if you know how to swap an engine or whatever else like that. You know, if the tranny is slipping, again, you probably want to avoid it. Rear ends clanging around, you know, basically if you're hearing any, like, really bad noises, or it's shaking when it's going down the road, you'll want to probably avoid that car. And, you know, it's all night. It's, yeah, that can be quite expensive, you know, and especially if you send it over to a shop. Because, I mean, parts typically aren't super expensive, you know, depending on what it is. But for the most part, like, I've done, I think, 3 orders from Rock Auto, and it's cost me like $700-800, right? And that's damn near rebuilding the entire car from those orders. You know, like new drums, new tie rods on the one side, ball joint on the other side, you know, wheel bearings on the one side, all that different stuff, right? And, you know, but I understand not everybody wants to get into a big project like I did. And to be honest, I didn't expect it to be as big as it was, but, or as big as it is, but that happens, right? And, you know, and you might lose a bit of faith at times. And I mean, I know I did. I'm not going to lie. There were times where I hit roadblocks and I just listed the car, but I never really got anybody seriously interested. So I just continued to work on the car. Just, you know, just kept going with it, right? And, you know, it is a great feeling, though, that when you get that car, I mean, it might need a little bit of work, but then if you're able to do the work yourself, there's nothing that feels better than that. And afterwards, you know, you drive it around, and I mean, and like my car, you know, it's quite the beater. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's reliable as hell. I could take this across country and not have any thought of doing that besides comfortability, but for reliability's sake, I wouldn't have an issue with that, doing that. So, you know, there is that whole thing too. And you got to make sure that your car is kind of tested for anything like that as well. And yeah, and like something else you'll want to check for too, does everything work? And especially for like tech heavy cars, like specifically I'm talking like German luxury cars for the most part. They do have a bunch of tech in them, like, okay, does, for example, like in BMW, does the iDrive, does that work? Does the AC work? If it has an airbag or something like that, suspension, does that work properly? And you go on and on like this, and and obviously you check the other stuff too. But a lot of people won't think about that. They won't think about testing all the electronics or testing if the blower motor works in a car. Because believe me, mine is loud as hell when you put it on high fan, but I'll get it replaced at some point. It's coming to the end of the season, so I won't need it for quite some time. But, just stuff like that, right? And it's pretty basic for the most part. But, it's just a good reminder for people. And even if, you know everything, there's always going to be something you forget to do. You might forget to check some of the electronics, and then the computer is not working all that well. Or whatever else. And especially some of the older stuff. Like, go to the early 2000s stuff, and you'll have dead pixels in the screen, whatever else. You always want to look for that sort of stuff, right? And that's why it's nice to have a second set of eyes. Because even my dad, just the other week, me and him looked at 05 Dodge Magnum SXT all-wheel drive. Cool car. Honestly, and my dad owned one before. Fantastic vehicle. It was just needed too much work, and he wrote it off. So, thank you, dear number 3, for that one. And also, like, something else you want to look at, too. And specifically, this is going to be with vehicles more so with metal bumpers, although plastic ones obviously, too. But, if you look at a vehicle that has a dent in the bumper, you might not think much of it, but I can tell you firsthand, my dad's 99 Dodge Ram has a dent. It's about, I'd say about 1/4 of an inch in the bumper. Nothing much. But when we were trying to remove the headlights out, because we were replacing the lenses because they were just old and tired, and we got newer ones that looked better. It was such a bitch to do because of that bumper. And that bumper made it so that took a long time to do. So bear stuff like that in mind. You want to look at some of the small stuff as well, such as like little dents like that. And like to me, like hail damage is not a big thing. But and for any of the sellers out there too that are gonna look at this and go, okay, that or might be listing a vehicle, whatever else, and they want to kind of review everything. Try and put as much information as you know about the car. If you have any service records, include them with the car. If there has been any inspections, include that with the car. Let's see, what else is there? Just honestly, just be as honest as you can about the vehicle. Because there's so many times that you hear that somebody bought a vehicle and it's just a piece of crap, right? Because somebody didn't know what they were doing or anything like that, and they didn't disclose that. And I know there are some shady people out there, but I hope the people watching this will see this and go, hey, I'm going to try and do that and whatever else, right? And that's always a good thing to do. Yeah, so, okay, this video's gone on quite long now, so I think I'm going to stop it here. Ow! Sorry, I'm a little sick too, so you'll have to forgive me if my voice doesn't sound 100%, or if I'm not 100% right now, because I've been sick for the past couple of days. It's not horrible yet, but it's gonna get there, so, yeah. But I hope this helps somebody out there, somebody that's buying or selling a car, and, it might not be, even if it looks mint, you want to look at it carefully, and especially with old classics, if you can, bring a mechanic with you to look it over, just because, there can be issues with that. Just due to there are so many cars that are represented as restored and beautiful cars when actually they just threw a paint job on it and didn't restore underneath of it or anything like that. And that's why it's always nice to be able to crawl underneath the car and take a look with a flashlight, right? So, yeah. And also, one last thing I want to do before this video ends. And some people don't think about doing this. When you're finished driving, and you'll always want to take it up to highway speeds, you know, because that's, you know, you'll want to take a car on the highway at some point, so you want to test it, right? But if you do that, you come back and you park. Leave it running for a few seconds, and just look underneath of it and see if there's anything leaking, you know, whether it's oil, whether it's a tranny leak, whether it's a coolant leak. And check your temperature gauge, too, if your car happens to have one, because some cars don't. It's kind of weird that way. But yeah, and also oil pressure gauge if you happen to have one. But yeah, other than that, I'm going to end this video here. And yeah, I hope this helps you guys out there. And again, thank you so much for the love and the support that you gave on my previous video. And I hope to give you weekly videos that help along these lines. So, anyways, I hope you have a wonderful day and a fantastic weekend. And I will see you next time. Bye!